Good evening, folks, family, friends, loved ones, enemies, frenemies, wizards, witches, muggles, mudbloods, people of Middle-earth, to the first episode of Disguise coverage in what is now officially the Buffalo Bills offseason. There was no episode of Disguise coverage last week because of sadness. There's still some sadness this week, but we're trooping through it right now, and we're officially into the offseason. The Bills, as we all know at this point, or if you don't know, I hate to be the one to break this news to you. The Buffalo Bills lost to the Kansas City Chiefs in heartbreaking fashion in the divisional round of the AFC playoffs, but we're not going to talk about that. We're not going to rehash the past. That's not what we're doing here. This episode is very much focused on the future of the Buffalo Bills, and that's why it's titled Buffalo Bills Offseason Priorities. Myself and my two guests here tonight, Mr. David Fox and Mr. Anthony Romeo, both of the Cover One team, have graciously joined me to talk about some offseason priorities, and we're each going to give our top three, talk about where the Bills need to go. Guys, welcome. David, we'll start with you. How you feeling? You still reeling from the loss? Are you happy, sad, excited? What are you feeling?
I'm tired, and I am still in the depressions of a postseason Bills loss, and
I feel you.
It's tough. It's tough.
It's not
but
great.
We're here to do what I feel like usually, at least me growing up, like I didn't really start watching football until like 2009.
Okay.
So to me, the Bills have all like just sucked during that whole time.
Yes.
And sucked for a whole 10 years before that.
Correct.
So to me, off-season stuff is like, oh yeah, let's get into that.
Yes.
Let's get into all the wonders and dreams that will never ever happen.
One of my biggest things with the Bills being good now, like I'm so used to like already looking towards the draft by like November. And now that the Bills are making playoff runs, like I'm so behind on draft stuff.
I know nothing about this draft. I know there are some receivers.
I got to do it too.
There's like a center, and that's it. That's all I got. Oh, and the two Georgia D linemen.
Wyatt and Davis.
That's it. That's it. That's all I got.
Yeah, it's a different dynamic now with how the Bills have moved forward. It changes what you think about as a fan. It changes how we operate. Covering the Bills. Anthony, how do you feel? Right now, considering where we are.
Yeah, I mean, I can relate to a lot of that, right? It still sucks. It still stings. Before we came on, I was saying to you guys that if one more person says to me, oh my God, that was such a good game.
They were so good, though.
I'm just going to slap them. It's just going to be
shut.
Even at work. I mean, I'm telling you, I'm just like, no, you thought it was a good game.
Right.
I do not think it was a good game. It was miserable for all Bills fans. Yeah, I mean, obviously that's part of it. And I can relate to the sucking my entire life. I mean, I've been watching football since the Bills since I can remember. It's literally part of my first memories. But and they've sucked for most of that time. And you're right that the offseason is exciting in that way. But at the same time, I feel like my heart puts it in perspective a little bit. Now, this week, not last week, this week, it's in perspective. So when people, even my students say to me, they're like, oh my God, don't grade it if you're still mad about the Bills or whatever. And I'm like, guys, I've been a Bills fan my whole life. Losing in the second round of the playoffs is a hell of a lot better than going 6-10 and 8-8 and being the last team. It sucks. I've been miserable for a long time. This one hurts a lot because I feel like we could have won it all, but it's still put into perspective of, you know what? It's not that bad. It's okay. It's okay. But don't tell me all it was a good game bull crap, because being that close does still hurt,
I think that's exactly what it is. It's like knowing that we could have won it all potentially, and then combining with knowing like we could have hosted the AFC Championship game. And even if you put all those things aside, just knowing like, I don't know, if you're up with 13 seconds left and you're kicking off, one would think you'd be in good shape to win a game. And I think that's even it too. You would think that, like, much like, David and I, Anthony, were talking offline before you got in. I was comparing that loss to the Chiefs to like the Music City Miracle for me when I was little. Cause I just thought like, well, who runs a kickoff back? Like it's so hard. And then it gets in Frank Wycheck's hands and I'm like, well, he's slow. And then we all know what happened after that. Like just the odds of it happening, I think makes it so much worse. And Now we are, in a similar situation going into this offseason now of, okay, how do the Bills continue to try and get over that hump, whether that hump is, the Kansas City Chiefs or the hump of just getting to the Super Bowl in general. There are priorities for this team. There are things that this team can do and need to do to get better. And again, that's the focus of tonight's show. I appreciate you guys joining me, but I want to take some focus away from that for a minute to bring up the sponsor of the show that I always like to bring up. I bring them up at different points, but I want to bring it up now to start off because we talked about some sad stuff, which was the Bills. They made us sad. This pizza makes me genuinely happy. It's delicious. It's fantastic. Sweet sauce pie, a homemade blue cheese. They're awesome people. They've done toy drives. They've donated to Roswell and trying to knock out cancer. Like, they're good people. They make good pizza. And I want to pull up because, I don't want anyone to think like, oh, like, how good is it? Can you show it? Is it not good? And I'm going to show it. I'm going to bring up a piece of this pizza because I just feel like if you show it, people will understand just how good it is. I have this file saved on my computer and I just titled it pizza. I don't have anything else to put it as. Look at it. Embrace it. It's delicious. If you live in the Buffalo area, this will make you happy. It'll make you happy in your heart and in your stomach and in your mind. And maybe you'll cry a little bit therapeutically about the Bills as you eat it, but it'll be delicious and it'll bring you a small moment of joy. That's our sponsors, One Pie Pizza. I love them. I don't love what happened to the Bills, but I love One Pie Pizza and I appreciate them. And now we move on full speed ahead into the offseason priorities. So the theme of this for everyone, and also what I want to do if you're joining us here live, 1, thank you very much. Appreciate you. 2, we'd like to see your comments. What do you think the Bills need to work on? What do you think needs to Kendall, new member of Cover One. Welcome to the team, Kendall. And Kendall comments, I need pizza like that out in Utah. I feel like you could maybe get it, I don't know, like flash frozen and sent to you out there somehow, some way. It's probably going to cost a little bit. Or dude, just take a flight here, get the pizza, and then fly back home. And it's a win-win.
Dinner's ready. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, it's done. You're good, right? You're good to go right there. It's a quick flight. What is it, like a 10-minute flight from Utah to Buffalo? Easy. If you're here with us live, throw in your questions, thoughts, comments, concerns. I started bringing up some stuff. What are your top priorities you think the Bills need to address? It could be as large scale or as granular of a detail. That's what we're operating with tonight. It could be large scale, like they need to fix this side of the ball, or it could be they need to fix this one position and do this one thing particular. That's how we're operating tonight. That's how we're going to kick it off. So again, if you're joining us live, thank you so much. Throw some comments into the chat. Let's have an open conversation like we like to do here. David, we're going to start with you. No pressure.
No pressure.
No pressure at all. What is your number one tippy top offseason priority for the Buffalo Bills in this offseason?
Okay. So I'm putting this as number one. Not just because I did like a solid half hour of research into this, even though it's going to be absolutely meaningless when they hire someone else.
Okay.
But to me, the number one priority is finding a new offensive line staff because Bobby Johnson now going to the Giants. Yes. I feel like the appropriate feelings towards Bobby Johnson in the last 3 years have been very mixed. There's, the offensive line definitely had its ups. It had its downs. It was kind of confusing as to where the ups came from and where the downs came from. No one's, it's a little odd. Rick Bates. Rick Bates. Yeah. I mean, there's guys like Ike Bucker and Rick Bates who like are practice squad guys that played at a average level. And then you have people like John Feliciano who stick around and don't really do anything. Yeah. And now you're wondering if they're going to be cutting him to save some cap. Which if anyone's curious at the moment, if you cut John Feliciano pre-June 1st, $3.37 million right off the cap.
Okay. How do you feel about if the Bills ran back the exact same offensive line that they ended this year with? So say they brought Bates back and you're going Dawkins, Bates, Morse, Darrell Williams, Spencer Brown, Anthony. I'm going to get to Anthony's follow-up in a second since he's shaking his head. But David, how do you feel about running that group back? Regardless of the coaching staff piece, do you feel confident from an on-the-field perspective running that 5 back?
Not overly so.
Okay.
Largely because of the interior. Like I like Mitch Morse. And if we're gonna really put some people on tilt right now, if you cut Mitch Morse, it's $8.5 million off the cap. Just saying.
No.
That's not something I recommend doing.
No,
because I love Mitch Morse.
He's the prince that was promised.
Morse here. He's awesome. Just throwing it out here, just trying to make people a little angry. So, but if you look at if you look at guard to guard, I mean, Darrell Williams is fine at right guard. I wouldn't say he's amazing. He struggles with like really moving his feet, especially in pass protection, which like
that's not important for a lineman though. You don't
not
have to
important at all. It's definitely not the thing I struggled with in high school when I played offensive line, and the only reason why I played at guard. God. He's fine, but you don't let fine keep you from upgrading. Like there are clear upgrades from John Feliciano. Well, that too, but also from Darrell Williams.
Yes.
And the same sort of thing with Rick Bates. Rick Bates was a delightful late season surprise that he played like a competent NFL player.
Yeah.
The standard should be a little higher if you want to make it to a Super Bowl. Otherwise, you look at what the Bengals are right now, where you're like, Jonah Williams and Quentin Spain are the only ones keeping Joe Burrow alive, while Akeem Adeniji / Jackson Carman and Isaiah Prince are just turnstiles.
Yeah.
And that might be insulting to turnstiles.
Yeah.
Damn, that's rough.
I mean,
fair enough.
But as far as the offensive line coaches go and who might be available, obviously the big name is Mike Munchak, who for whatever reason is not going to be retained in Denver with Nathaniel Hackett, former Buffalo Bills offensive coordinator Nathaniel Hackett.
Bills legend Nate Hackett.
Go Duggernaut. The Duggernaut does not stop unless you're in Alabama. Then so Mike Munchak, if they manage to get Mike Munchak, that would be one of the best things they could do in the entire offseason, because he is phenomenal. He's been phenomenal as an offensive line coach at Tennessee, in Pittsburgh. I mean,
phenomenal as a player.
Yeah. I mean, he even helped revitalize Garrett Bowles' career from somebody who held seemingly every game to somebody that nobody really thinks about that much, and got a nice extension. So Mike Munchak, if they can get him, sign me up. Day one, throw the bag at him. If he's not available, there's some other options that I looked into. So when you look into like coaches tend to go with people that they know. So the question with Ken Dorsey is, well, who does he know now that he's the offensive coordinator? Well, his time in coaching has been with the Bills and with the Panthers. So if you look at the Panther staff that he was on, most of them are either with the Bills or they're in Washington with Ron Rivera. So that's not really an option. Nobody's really going to take a lateral move, even for a Super Bowl champion. I mean, it's just like, that's not really an option. And it's not like the offensive line coach for them, I forget what his name is, currently in Washington, is like some like great superstar. Yeah, so guru or whatever. Yeah. It is what it is. So the three that I found, though, are Jeff Davidson, who was on the Browns staff with Ken Dorsey when he was a player. From 2006 to 2008. Jeff Davidson is a longtime offensive line coach. He was last with the Lions in 2019. He took an indefinite leave from coaching in 2020. So I don't know if that's actually an option, but that was one of the ones that came up. The more realistic options might be someone like Mike Sullivan, who was also an offensive line coach with the Browns when Dorsey was there. He became the offensive line coach for the Titans from like 2016 to like 2020. Which is, I mean, that's a pretty good run of guys that they developed. I mean, he took Jack Conklin, made him a pretty solid right tackle, and
Taylor Lewan is a substandard human, but
Quint, that was when Quentin Spain was there. Ben Jones, I mean, he wasn't an overly high draft pick from what I remember. I mean, that Titans offensive line is a bunch of like really solid, good dudes. He got like demoted for some reason and is now the assistant O-line coach for the Titans. I don't know what that's all about, but if they manage to snag him away from a playoff contending team like the Titans, I'll take that. And then the last one that I looked at was Dan Rauscher, who is the Saints run game coordinator, tight ends coach. He has been their offensive line coach for probably 5 years previous to that. When Dan Campbell became the head coach of the Lions, they moved him to tight end coach and run game coordinator. And they had someone else be the offensive line coach. He has, I mean, you look at the Saints throughout Sean Payton's tenure as the head coach, they emphasize and coach up offensive linemen like no one else.
Yes, they do. Very much so.
Between Doug Marrone being there, I mean, you can have your issues with Doug Marrone because who doesn't? But he knew how to coach offensive line when he was in New Orleans. Same with Aaron Cromer, and same with Dan Rauscher. I mean, if they can land someone like him, that would be people might not know who he is, but that would be, in my opinion, a slam dunk.
Okay, I like what you've laid out, Anthony. Before we get to your number one, that was super in depth. I'm definitely going to snip a bunch of that as pro.
Yeah, and it's going to mean nothing because they'll hire someone else.
Yeah, that's true.
Bob Smith from the street.
Yeah, right from the street. You could tell. David is a writer based on how he just laid everything out. Yeah, very thorough.
Well, I'm also reading from this document that I have laid out here.
But it's prep work. It all counts some way, shape, or form. Anthony, before you give your number one, I want to go back to when you were very
offensive line
shaking your head. Yes, so you do not want to run back that 5 at the end of the year.
Oh, yeah. I've heard that before somewhere. Run back the tape 2019 or 2020 season last year at this time when we were like, oh, yeah, our offensive line is going to be good next year because we're running back these 5 guys and they haven't played a snap together, but they're the 5 starters. And that blew up in our face, right? We knew the offensive line wasn't great last year and they needed to improve. But we were like, no, we got these 5 and they're our starters and we're going to be okay. And that blew up big time. They all sucked, all right? They all sucked, period. Maybe Mitch Morris, not so much. But the rest of them absolutely blew it. And it was bad, right? From start to finish, right? I mean, Dawkins wasn't Dawkins at all this season, really. And the Spencer Brown ended up starting.
Dawkins.
Yeah, right. Not himself. I know, right? That's a joke, too. That's a total joke, too. But, I mean, we know what the expectations were for Dawkins and what he looked like on the field. Not himself. Obviously, a lot of that had to do with COVID, too, in the beginning. But still, everybody on that line, garbage. I mean, there was one game where I literally said that was the worst offensive line play I have ever seen, ever, maybe in the history of football. Because if we didn't have Josh Allen, the quarterback would be dead. Because Josh Allen made plays that nobody else could make. But, and so my point is, can we bring those 5 back? Sure. I'd be happy with that. Bates earned a spot on this roster. Period. Full stop. He's earned it. Now, is he the de facto starter? Maybe right now on this roster. But we better get some guys behind him. I agree. Feliciano, send him packing now. You can upgrade from that. You got to draft somebody, right? I want a guard in the draft, which ties into what I was going to say for my one. But guard is definitely a position to need. I don't care if it's left guard, right guard. We're talking about, you mentioned a couple guys we could cut to save cap. Forget Mitch Morris. I want to keep him. But Darrell Williams, you look at his contract now. We paid him as a tackle. He's now a guard. You can't, you're not earning that money right now, right? Has he been okay? Sure. If we keep him, is that okay? Sure. But if we need cap and we're looking to upgrade, that's Darrell Williams. Bye, buddy. We can sign somebody to replace you and get a little bit of money toward another position, right? So, I mean, and the way they structured his contract, if I remember correctly, was so that they could get out of it after 1 year without a huge cap commitment. So they know what they're doing there. And, so no, if they brought back just the same offensive line, is that good? Am I happy with that? No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. We need to add in the draft. You got to have better depth and you got to have competition for these starters. Because just like last year, none of us thought Spencer Brown was going to be the starter. Nobody ever thought that. But guess what? He earned it. He played in and he showed up. And he did okay for a rookie. And I expect him to take a step forward. So maybe he's the opening day starter. But you got to have competition somewhere. I don't care if it's a vet. You definitely have to draft somebody because you got to start developing again. And whoever you bring in as the coach is going to have some say in that, obviously, and be part of that. But yeah, offensive line, God, if they bring back the same, it'd be running back the tape from last year, which does not line up for me.
Yeah.
That's fair. That's fair. I think there's a lot of, I think it's weird because I hated the offensive line for so much of the year. And then Bates got in and they started running the ball well. Everything changed. Like they were suddenly able to run because they were running, the last 5 weeks of the year, 48% gap runs, up from 27% weeks 1 through 13. So they were running gap in the top 5%. They were successful. Devin Singletary was the 8th leading rusher down the stretch in weeks. They were executing well in pass protection. They even performed well in the playoffs. And I'm torn, with where this offensive line is, because it was like everything was just serviceable with Bates. But Bates played, I think, above expectation, and he showed some good traits. But there is a need for improvement there. And Anthony, to your point, the number that's still going to stick in my head, Josh Allen was the most pressured quarterback in the entire NFL in 2021. But out of quarterbacks with at least 40 dropbacks, he had a 10.1 or 10.6 pressure to sacks ratio, which was like the 3rd lowest. He was the reason he wasn't sacked all the time. His pocket manipulation, his navigation, his athleticism, his evasion ability and technique. He made the line look better than it was. And so I'm going to give my point in a minute on some things because it is related to one of my offseason priorities. But Anthony, I know you said it was tied into yours. Is offensive line your number one top priority, or is something else your number one?
No, when you introduced this topic to us, you said, you can say anything, pick a position, pick a topic, right? Yep. And so without a doubt, I didn't have to hesitate on this. Okay. The number one priority for the Buffalo Bills
Trade Josh
is simple to me. It's very simple. Yeah, right. Okay. Keep Josh Allen happy. Number one. So they already started this, right? Before last week, I would have said on our show, Josh Allen said, hire Ken Dorsey as the offensive coordinator. He didn't mix words. He said that in his press conference. He didn't literally say those words, but he said it on camera. Hire Ken Dorsey as the offensive coordinator, period. That's what I want. Guess what? I don't care if you wanted twice of McDermott's salary. You better have made Ken Dorsey the offensive coordinator. And they did, right? Thank you. You've now made Josh Allen happy. Whatever Josh Allen has to say and have a say in what happens with this team. He's earned it. He's absolutely earned it. Yes. He is this team. No matter what. I don't care. Wide receiver. If Josh Allen comes to McDermott and Bean and says, I have a great connection with said player, whatever player it is. Tanner Gentry is his best friend. I want Tanner Gentry on the active roster. Guess what? Make a roster spot for Tanner motherfucking Gentry. If he wants him on the roster, you only got 52 other guys because Tanner Gentry is on the 51 if you count Allen. Tanner Gentry is on the roster.
Fair.
It might not be Emmanuel Sanders, for example. He's a free agent, but if Josh Allen were to say, Emmanuel Sanders and I really connected, I think we could build on that. You're paying Emmanuel Sanders to be on this team next year. I don't think that's the case. I don't really want to keep Emmanuel Sanders. But whatever it takes to keep Josh Allen happy is what this team has to do. And now, yes, you're right. There's cap space and numbers and all that. I don't care. Whatever it is. If Josh Allen says, we need more a better, somebody I trust more at guard starting next year, then that's what happens.
What if he's like, I want Ed Oliver's horse. I want his horse.
Yes.
Give it to him. You're taking
he could say, I want a ham sandwich before snap every game. They better hire freaking the top chef to make a ham sandwich for this guy every game. It doesn't matter. That's how these teams roll. I said this about the Packers, and people fought me about it forever. You have Aaron freaking Rodgers. You make Aaron freaking Rodgers happy, and you're a Super Bowl contender. I don't care if you're trying to play defense or whatever. You make him happy, you're a Super Bowl contender. Same thing with this Bills team. You have defensive coaches. You have the defensive staff. Trust me, my other ones will touch on defense. But number one priority, above all else, keep Josh Allen happy. That has to be it. And part of that to me is offensive line, wide receiver. Somebody in the chat brought up Isaiah McKenzie. That's going to be a situation. They have to address those things. And when they're making those decisions, they have to come to Josh Allen and bring him in the conversation. We can only sign Emmanuel Sanders for a couple million or get Isaiah McKenzie a contract on this team. What is your input on this? And have him say, well, I'd rather have Isaiah McKenzie. Okay, we're going to give him his money then, and it's that simple to me. They have to do their due diligence as GM and coach. You know, if something happened with one of those guys and they're like, you know what, they're not the right guy. But just keep Josh Allen happy. Get it.
I think
Draft a wide receiver. Get that depth back. You know, there's been a lot of talk about Cole Beasley. We know Josh Allen loves Cole Beasley, and Bean made it very clear in his press conference. Cole Beasley's under contract, and we plan on keeping him. Like, that's it. You know, maybe they rework it or whatever to clear cap space, but you know, to me, he has to stay. But the wide receivers, the offensive line, it all goes through Josh Allen.
Very fair. I also like the theme of that, of like you know, I don't know if I'm dressing Tanner Gentry to make Josh happy, but I like the idea and the notion of,
if he says it,
you know,
I don't care.
Whatever he needs. I want Tanner Gentry at center. Everybody's like, all right, Tanner, take some snaps.
Yeah, let's go. Put on about 300 pounds and we'll put you in.
Work on your shotgun snaps and your pulls, and we'll see what we can do here. No, but I think this is, you know, I'm gonna give my first in a minute, but I'm going to start with my third, you know, because we're all giving our top three. My third relates into this. So my third offseason priority was the interior offensive line because of the notion of everything connecting back to Josh Allen. And I don't think in a perfect world, the Bills would have all pros at every position, but it's not realistic. And when it comes to the offensive line, I would love if the offensive line was like a top 5 all-pro studded offensive line. I would love if we had Quentin Nelson and Ryan Ramczyk and all these dudes up front, but it's not feasible to have studs at every single position. I just want the Bills offensive line to be average. That's it. I don't want them to be terrible. And the problem was this past year with the Bills offensive line, I think overall they would grade out to be average, but they had too many roller coastery moments. Sometimes they look like a top 10 unit. Other times they look like a bottom 5 unit. The game against Jacksonville really comes to mind where they just could not hold up against anything. Simple 2-man games and 4-man rushes. They just could not hold up. But what we saw at the end of the year, and that's why Ryan Bates is so intriguing to me. They put Bates in there who, no disrespect to Ryan Bates, but Ryan Bates should not be the guy that you're like, well, we just got Ryan Bates in the lineup. The line is fixed. But he fixed everything seemingly. Everybody suddenly played better. It seemed like they unlocked this new scheme and this chemistry amongst the offensive line. And I want him to come back. I'm not opposed to him starting. Coming into, like, if you would have asked me in week 13 or 12, my number one priority for this offseason was interior offensive line. Sign them, draft them, day one, day 2, whatever it is, right? It strengthened the interior of this offensive line. Now, I'm kind of pausing on that a little. I still think the line needs improvement and it needs reinforcement, especially from a youth perspective, right? Like, I don't think the future of this offensive line is Darrell Williams at right guard and Ryan Bates at left guard. They need youth. They need to get younger. They need to keep progressing. Mitch Morse is getting up there, combined with the concussion history. You've got some shakiness in that interior, right? But with just what we saw from the line last year, Anthony, you mentioned a good point. Like, if you would have told us coming into the year that the keys to the Bills offensive line would be Spencer Brown at right tackle and Ryan Bates at left guard, you would have been like, well, what happened to everyone else? Like, Spencer Brown was, I've combined them into one. Spencer Brown, even just from Bean's mouth, was not supposed to see the field last year, really. He was going to be the rotational guy, the 6th offensive lineman. They were going to get his feet wet little by little, you know, and take some bite-sized chunks. And instead, he has to get thrust into the lineup because of the inconsistency and the poor play. And the reason it's not my number 1 or my 2 is because I think obviously there's some other things that are more, you know, a higher priority, but it's right up there with me because I don't think – I would like some more weapons on the outside, especially if Manny Sands doesn't come back, which he probably doesn't. Cole Beasley, whether it was injury or starting to hit the wall, didn't look like the same Cole Beasley last year. I think it was more injury-based than it was anything else. But I think it's easier to find PC weapons, whether it's re-signings or guys later in the draft. I think it's easier to find periphery weaponry pieces than it is your offensive line. And we saw how much of an issue it was last year. And whether it's, you know, overall just keeping Josh happy or, you know, David, to go to your point, tying it into the offensive line coaching staff, I'm in that similar kind of boat. Again, it's not my 1, it's my 3, but especially in that interior offensive line, I think as the year went on, Dawkins started to play more like Deion Dawkins. I think Mitch Morse is greatly underappreciated. Spencer Brown, a lot of roller coastery moments. He had some really bad snaps in that divisional round against Kansas City, but he also had some really good snaps. But again, That's what I'm expecting from a guy who played 8-on-8 football in high school and then went to college at the University of Northern Iowa and only really started for 1.5 years kind of, and then opted out for COVID in 2020. Like the fact that we're getting any quality snaps from Spencer Brown this past year is just honestly a huge positive and a plus. But yeah, we have this amazing thing in Josh Allen and the weapons and the system and the scheme. And it would be such a shame if we can't get to any of that because we can't protect or because we can't run the ball and do these simple things.
The last offensive line point that I want to make, can we all agree that, you need to take a certain offensive lineman off the roster and bring him to the farm? He who shall not be named at this point. Starter, prepper, bring him in. No, off to the farm you go, buddy. You can't even trade him, cut him, just make him disappear.
Even that, like the fact that he had to keep coming back, like it just shows you the state of this line. But interior O-line is number 3 for me. I'm going to give my number 1.
Cody Ford is what somebody said Mongo. No, I was talking about Cody Ford. That's
I was talking about Cody Ford here.
I was talking about Bobby Hart.
Yeah, Bobby Hart.
I was going with Bobby Hart. I thought you were talking Bobby Hart.
Oh, no. Cody Ford. I mean, come on. I just meant they trusted him. Cody Ford obviously coming into the season, even though he had doubtful, injury,
they've given Cody Ford every chance they could. It's done. Let's move on.
And every time they put him in, he sucks.
We haven't really tried him at left guard, though, so that could work maybe. Let's plug him in, maybe. Fingers crossed. That's an unfortunate one. Oh God, I don't even. Yeah, that's a whole nother conversation. Just the Cody Ford mountain. My one. I feel like if anybody follows me on Twitter, it's pretty easy to know what my one is. I said it all last offseason, and I'm in the same boat again this year, but I think I'm more staunch in my viewpoint of it. My number 1 offseason priority is adding speed and scheme versatility to the number 2 corner spot. I like Levi Wallace. I think he, at worst, is an average corner. You could do a lot worse than Levi Wallace as your number 2 corner. He gives you a high floor. Yes, Phillip Gaines. You could have Phillip Gaines, which would not be good. He gives you a high floor. He's responsible. He's heady. He's smart. He's got a tremendous attitude. And not to make that sound corny, but that's a big thing, right? Like culture and how you fit into a team is a good thing. I really like Levi Wallace. My problem at this point is we saw it last year. We saw it again this year. There is a certain ceiling. You are capped when Levi Wallace is your corner 2. And my big issue, and I think things were amplified in the Kansas City game in the playoffs because Tre'Davious White was down. And that's not really something you can plan for, although addressing the corner position and having better depth allows you to be able to mitigate a loss like that a little bit more. But the bigger problem I have with Levi as the corner 2, and again, I like Levi Wallace, this Bills defense as a whole, but especially in the secondary, they're very good, right? We know Hyde and Poyer are all pros. Tre'Davious White is an all pro. But this unit collectively, they are good because of technique and scheme, right? They are technically sound. They're smart. They are good with the fundamentals. They're able to be, used in multiple ways, and they're versatile, especially with Hyde and Poyer. The whole reason this show is called Disguise Coverage is because of Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer and what they do for this Bills defense and how important it is, right? But what you see time and time again, it's not just the Kansas City Chiefs, but I'll use that as the example. When they come up against physically gifted offenses, whether it's size, whether it's speed, you can still win with technique and scheme, but you have to be so on point with your technique and scheme. Your hand technique has to be right. Your footwork has to be strong. You have to have the right call from the coordinator. The corner and the safety have to both be reading the same thing. They both have to be reading the same thing as Milano or Taron Johnson or Tremaine Edmonds. All these things have to click when you don't have the physical gifts to match up with physically gifted offenses, right? And it all comes back to my theme for this offseason of Nate Tice said it when he was on the show, and so I'm stealing this from him, but I told him I was going to do it, and he was okay with it. It's all the idea of you need to be able to throw rock, paper, and scissors when you're playing rock, paper, scissors, right? If you go out and you just throw rock, you can win by just throwing rock. It's possible, but your odds of winning dramatically go up if you're able to throw rock, paper, and scissors. That's what the Bills defense needs. And I think a scheme versatile corner 2 that has speed, and when I say scheme versatile, I mean someone who can function in man and zone. I don't care about, the height or the size or what school they went to. Give me a scheme versatile corner with some speed that allows the Bills defense to continue to throw rock, paper, and scissors against these offenses. Kansas City is the standard, right? They are the hump that we have been unable to overcome at this moment. But who's in the Super Bowl? Jamar Chase, Tyler Boyd, T. Higgins. They're running that back next year. Burrow's going to get better. What's the only thing the Bengals offense has to fix this offseason? The
offensive line.
You don't think they're going to sign some guys and draft some guys? Those weapons are staying there. You know who else is in that AFC besides the Chiefs? The Los Angeles Chargers. They got a squad. What happens if Aaron Rodgers goes to the Denver Broncos and has Jerry Jeudy and Cortland Sutton and Tim Patrick and Noah Fant and Javonte Williams? They have a squad out there. There's all these groups that are going to threaten you with technique and physical gifts from a passing perspective. I think the Bills, whether it's free agency, I don't see it really happening in free agency. I don't think they're going to have the big money to go after someone. I would love to see it in the draft, but by hook or by crook, I don't care. Give me a scheme versatile corner 2 with some speed, allow us to be able to do more things on the back end, match up well against these teams that can go vertical and do a variety of things. It's not just about Kansas City, but Kansas City is in that mold. That's my number one. I think until we get that, the ability of this Bills defense is capped. The ceiling, it's still a high ceiling. They can still be very good, as we see, but they're going to struggle in certain matchups because they're not going to be able to throw rock, paper, and scissors. That's my number one.
I love it. And that connects to one of mine as well. I mean, cornerback is a glaring need right now. Not just for improvement, even if you love Levi, we don't know that he's going to be back, right? And Trey White, he might not be ready week 1. And
that's even a bigger one too. Like with the health of Tre'Davious White, he should be back.
Yes.
But what if he doesn't? What if he doesn't look like Tre'Davious White? Then we're in an even worse.
Might take 6 weeks, right? So cornerback becomes an immediate need to me. I mean, I don't know if they're going to use the free agency money to sign a cornerback that they trust and draft a cornerback. I say and because you still got to draft somebody and get somebody high in the draft that you trust.
That's my preferred route.
To match, just like you said, we need to have that versatility. Okay, Dane Jackson, we know what you are. Okay, then we need somebody to match that. Okay, so we needed somebody who's better man-to-man, better coverage skills. Then we have the ability to play zone, our normal zone, but also put somebody out there who's faster and can deal with man. And, especially aside, because Trey's, if he's healthy, is always going to be out there.
Yeah.
And, Taron Johnson now has the contract and has earned his spot on there. So it's really that CB2. And I agree. It's speed. I want somebody who's speedy and can, make the play, not just Levi, who, as you said, is kind of consistently always himself. So it did make number 3 on my list for that reason. It's totally, I agree with everything you said 100%. And there's just so much uncertainty there, right? We don't have a lot of good depth that we trust at cornerback, and it's one of the most needy depth positions at this point.
1,000%. And I always feel bad with it because, again, like I like Levi Wallace. I love his story, and I like how he's played. Like I don't think he's a bad corner, but
he might get paid.
That's a big thing too.
Somebody's
his
gonna
market
pay
value. His market value is apparently 9.6 APY, which
Nuts.
is
wild.
We can't pay
crazy to me.
No,
crazy.
Now is he? I mean,
good for him if he gets that. But that's a lot of money.
You're
for
right.
Levi Wallace.
So that reminds me a lot of go back 2 years and we had Jordan Phillips and all these guys get.
Oh, and Shaq Lawson.
Go away, and we were like, you know what? That's great. Thank you for your service, but we can't pay you that. And I feel that coming with Levi. Somebody now who's going to be cornerback needy is going to be like, you know what? We'll give you $10 million a year. And to me, that's just like mind blowing for the number 2 guy who we've just had for scraps over there, and now he's getting good for him though. He's earned it. I think he's earned it. Somebody's going to give him a chance.
If he can get it, he signed a 1-year deal and stayed here last year. His initial market value, right? If we stay on it, and Kendall put it in the chat. So Kendall says, would you guys bring Levi back for $5 million, plus though somewhere around there? That was his initial, literally a week ago or 2 weeks ago, his market value was $5.5 million. All of a sudden it shot up to 10. David, we'll start with you. Would you bring Levi back at around $5 million per season?
No, probably.
I'm Ron Burgundy.
That's very. It's very on the edge for me. Because one of the one of the reasons you have Levi Wallace is because he's been dirt cheap his entire time.
Yes, the value
and
the play
the
that you're
value
getting
for what you're getting. I just watched Moneyball for the first time this weekend.
Like the
value you got from the play that you got relative to the price you're paying for him was absurd. Like that was a great thing that they were able to land themselves into. Paying him $5 million is probably fair. I don't think it's what they need to do, because I think other options open up if you let him walk and then do other things to get back under the cap. I just think there's other options available. Will and the one thing that I've always said since Sean McDermott got hired, and even before, Sean McDermott knows how to coach up defensive backs. Like,
yes,
whoever they do bring in, he'll be fine. Like, other than Philip Gaines, who was just garbage. He was just
not good.
He couldn't do anything.
Not to be confused with EJ Gaines, who was fantastic and forced a fumble with a pulled leg.
I'll never forget that. That gets lost all the time. I will never forget that. EJ Gaines had a great season when he was here. Who am I thinking of? Kevin Johnson. He had a career year when he was here, and he was splitting reps with Levi Wallace. And then, I mean, he's gotten the most out of Levi Wallace. He's made Jordan Poyer from this sort of afterthought in Cleveland into an literally all-pro safety.
Yeah.
And he's turned Micah Hyde into this like sort of nickel-y kind of move him around type of DB into one of the best free safeties in football.
Yeah.
He knows how to get the best out of his defensive backs. So whoever they decide to bring in, I am trusting that they get the most out of them. That's what I think.
Fair. Yeah. Same question to you, Anthony. Would you bring Levi back for anything, or in this specific instance for around $5 million a year?
$5 million is a little too much for me. I mean, you have to do a cost comparison here. You don't have much cap space, and you know what Levi is, so you're taking the risk. You have to look at the market and say, well, who can I give $6 million to? Would that be an upgrade? And then is that worth it rather than giving Levi 4 to 5? I think so. I think that's ultimately what is going to happen here. Somebody's going to give him more than the Bills are willing to or can afford to give him. And, I thought of the famous Joe Marino saying, we've all talked cornerback for years, but Sean McDermott, the way he operates is star stud number one cornerback and scrub from the street, right? Star scrub number one cornerback and scrub from the street. And that's just the way he's operated entirely. And it's because he's such a damn good defensive backs coach that he can get these guys to play up to the level necessary to make your defense still good with somebody who probably isn't at the caliber of most NFL starters by most people's evaluation, and making him the number 2. So I mean, we need it now because of the depth situation, because of where we are. Unless there's some free agent that they love and they're like, you know what, this is the guy who's going to come in here and fill this role and draft somebody, again, because of depth need, and draft somebody higher. I mean, can we please get that number 1 or 2 cornerback this year, meaning pick rounds 1 or 2, not number 1 overall, because obviously cornerback is a premium position, but round 1 or 2, get a cornerback that you love and make us all happy, because then you have the depth. If Dane Jackson becomes the number 2 guy, I trust him there. Look at what he's done this year after Trey White was out. Is it ideal? No, but neither is Levi. So, I mean, it sounds more like what Sean McDermott is willing to do, right? Put Dane Jackson out there next to Trey White. You got Taron Johnson, and you draft somebody who you can now groom into that position if need be, right? And sign a veteran for depth as well, because, for minimum contract or something, because we need 4 or 5 guys out there.
I would love Levi to I would love to have that safety net of Levi. I would love to take a corner in round 1 and still somehow bring Levi back again for like $1 million or $2 million at most, and know that, like, okay, we can start Levi and we can let this guy develop. Or there are several corners. I put the tweet out a couple of days ago about last year's draft. The corners that were taken in rounds 1 and 2, literally all of them made a significant impact. The only ones that didn't have high snap percentages were J.C. Horn, because he went down in like week 3. Caleb Farley, who went down in week 6. Kelvin Joseph for the Cowboys, who had injury concerns all year. Even Asante Samuel, who was banged up and had different injuries. still saw 59% snap share. Eric Stokes saw 86%. We know what Patrick Surtain Jr. did, or the second did for Denver. This draft coming up, I don't think it's, top to bottom as strong as last year's from a cornerback perspective, but the top end of it is very, very, very strong. If the Bills get a corner in round 1 of who I'm thinking will be available there, that's a day 1 plug-in starter. And I would love to still do that and have the safety net of Levi Wallace, but I'm fine having a starting corner be a rookie and having the safety net of Dane Jackson. I don't want to, I don't want to make it seem like, no, I'm getting rid of Levi altogether. But again, the Bills are not the most financially viable from a cap perspective team coming into this offseason. And again, I feel so bad saying it. And I also feel, not to be disrespectful at all, but like we're saying, like, oh, don't pay this amazing athlete who's good enough to be in the NFL this amount of money. Obviously, he's good. He plays in the NFL. But I don't want to waste, and I feel bad saying that, but quote unquote, waste $5 million a year on Levi. If that's what they bring him back at, then I think he immediately, he's going to be the starter again. If we bring Levi back at $5 million a year, he's corner 2. We'll take a corner maybe in round 2 or 3 at the earliest, but I would expect another mid-round corner. And if we sign Levi at that money, my thought process is exactly what you said, Anthony. They're going to continue to go with no, we have the model, stud number 1, whoever at number 2 will be fine. And that's going to drive me insane because I swallowed it last year and was like, okay, you know what? Because of all those various reasons, McDermott coaches these guys up at that position grouping on defense as a whole. But look at, again, even to continue, look what he did with Poyer and Hyde. And look what has happened with Matt Milano. Even Tre'Davious White. When the Bills took Tre'Davious White at the end of the first round, nobody was like, well, this guy's going to be an all-pro corner. Everybody was like, okay, solid guy. He'll be fine. No one thought he was going to develop into what he has. Taron Johnson, look what he's developed into. We could also talk about, what Ed Oliver has become and the jump that he's seen. Even Harrison Phillips, the jump that he's made coming back from his knee injury. They develop on the defensive side of the ball, right? So I put my stock into that and said, you know what? Maybe Dane becomes this. Maybe Levi becomes this. I can't do it again this year. The ceiling is what it is with Levi Wallace. And maybe there's a small percentage that the ceiling could be higher with Dane Jackson, but I think it's still a very similar boat as it is with Levi Wallace. They need something different on that back end. And so for me to go back to Kendall's original question as well, I think we're all on the same page. I'm definitely coming nowhere near 10 mil a year. I honestly don't think I'm going near 5 mil a year. I would love for him to come back because of the safety net he provides. But yeah, I just think we need something different on that back end because it's not. And I would also be saying this. I want to preface this too for anyone. I would be saying this exact same thing if the Bills won the Super Bowl this year. I still think that needs to. It's not because we lost to Kansas City again. It had to change regardless. But very good thought-provoking question there from Kendall. And now we've gotten to big. So we all got our number 1s. Anthony, we also got your number 3, which was my number 1. David, we're going to pivot back to you now. What is your number 2 off-season priority that the Bills need to address?
What's the deal with this defensive line?
Okay. All right.
Okay, so I like Greg Rousseau because his physical traits are very intriguing.
Yes.
But more than that, they trusted him enough in his first year, which this staff doesn't always do. They tend to be a little more hesitant with guys in their first year. But one of the big things that Rousseau did was play run defense at a pretty high level.
Very much so.
For someone who played wide receiver in high school and played defensive end in college for 1 year is kind of weird that the thing he's good at is run defense.
Wasn't he top 6 in run stop win rate amongst everybody in the
like
NFL?
That.
Amongst edge players?
He was really good as a run defender. And it wasn't just he's just kind of like a proud. He's playing with good technique. He's playing that outside choice. It was really? This is the thing that you're going to plug and play, be good at? All right, whatever. I'm not complaining. But okay, so Greg Rousseau, Ed Oliver, and Harrison Phillips, like we just talked about, both took a good step forward this year. Ed Oliver, should have another 4 sacks to his sack totals this year. And they were taken away from him by either his teammates or his referees. So, I love Ed Oliver. Me and Kyle have talked about him tons on the Cover One Roundup. He's awesome. And then you have the opposite defensive end, and then you have rotationally, who's going to be the other 1 tech and 3 tech, because Star Lotulelei is still on this roster. Despite how little he plays, he's still on this roster. Because it's not just that like he's not getting in the game, it's just that he's not available.
Yeah.
He has various injuries. He's had various injuries throughout his time with the Bills and in Carolina. He had that weird absence. Do we know anything about that sort of
No, there's
absence?
rumors of like potential personal matters, like from a non-football standpoint.
We're not gonna get into that though.
No. But either way, to your point, and not to be inconsiderate, but it's still he's not available, and the best ability is availability.
That's the point.
Yada, yada.
You need to be available. And if you look into free agency in particular, we can talk about the draft. We can talk about both of those Georgia boys. Everyone's going to be talking about those Georgia boys. Everyone's going to want those guys.
Those Georgia boys.
The Bills are sitting at 25. The odds of getting any one of those guys is very slim. Like not to spoil anything about the 2022 NFL draft in April. Bills probably aren't getting either of those two guys. That being said, if you look in free agency, there's a lot of that mid-tier bargain bin hunting type of player that Brandon Beane loves to get that are available. So if you look at like Jaron Reed from Kansas City, who's like, okay, BJ Hill with Cincinnati, I'd be okay with that.
Tremendous hands, got an interception last week.
Malik Collins is not my favorite player, but he's like solid. Steve McClendon, Linval Joseph is probably a little over the hill, but maybe he can give you one more year. And then, I mean, Ndamukong Suh is available if you really want to get nasty and mean. If you got, you've got Akeem Hicks, who's probably got a year or two left in him to be just that big, nasty, disruptive type. Larry Ogunjobi, Austin Johnson. I mean, there's guys out there that kind of fit into that middle tier of free agency that Brandon Beane likes to pick at.
Yeah, and patch it together and piecemeal it.
And the important part is we're not trying to solve for who's going to be the starter. We know who the starter is. It's Ed Oliver, and we know the 1 tech, we don't really know what's going to happen there. And that's pretty important to figure out. But ultimately, the rotation for 3 tech, you can get sort of whoever, and it'll probably be fine, in my opinion. But then the other aspect of this is the edge, where you have Greg Rousseau, and then on the opposite end, you have Boogie and AJ, and I expected more out of AJ Epinesa, and we got pretty much nothing other than a Tua Tagovailoa injury. And with Boogie, I mean, he's had some moments. He came along a little bit towards the end of the season, but he's still one of those guys that I think they would rather him be this sort of like inside out type of player rather than just like as a full-time edge.
Yes.
So then what are the options?
Tell us.
Well, one of them is to bring back Jerry Hughes, whose market value is $3.3 million.
Oh,
which
I like it.
Isn't bad at all. And I still like Jerry Hughes. I think Jerry Hughes is good. I think he still has some years left in him. Not everyone's going to feel the same way. I don't care. But I like Jerry Hughes. I think he is somebody that if you bring him back again, that's fine. I still think he needs someone else. I think he just needs, and maybe they just roll with AJ Epinesa as the other guy. But again, you still need someone else there. You need 4 defensive ends. So let's say bring back Hughes. You got Boogie. You got Rousseau, and then
Epinesa.
Epinesa. I mean,
F.A. Obata, maybe Obata comes
maybe. And he's somebody that can also kind of work inside out. He gets a lot of pressure from that interior spot.
Are you bringing Harrison Phillips back?
Absolutely,
okay,
100%. This is a pro Harrison Phillips
absolutely
person exactly. And his market value was like what, $6 million or so?
Oh, is it really?
I thought so. I could be looking at it from home.
He really came on towards the end.
Yeah,
though.
Exactly. I mean, it hurts, but he did, and that's going to hurt the Bills too because I agree.
Did I write this down?
Harrison Phillips.
How did I not write this down? I even looked at it.
Where
I
am at the
okay,
one.
Here we go. Harrison Phillips, $5.4 million.
Okay.
I'd rather give $5.4 million to Harrison Phillips than I would Levi Wallace.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah,
I think
that's fair.
Yeah.
But the big thing is like they invested multiple second round picks into young defensive ends.
Yes.
That's got to work out.
Yes.
At least one of them's got to work out, whether that's Epinesa or whether that's Boogie.
Yes.
One of those two's got to work out, because if they don't, we're now looking at a lot of second-round picks that have been not great in Epinesa and Boogie and Cody Ford.
Yeah.
I mean,
not so much.
I like Brandon Beane. I like
first round.
Right. I like the process that he's had, but
maybe we should just trade out of the second round. Just trade the second round
pick
and go up in the first, or get more third rounds.
And if we'll recall, Brandon Beane was ready to trade back in the second round, and then Boogie Basham was his guy, and he was there.
Yep.
They really wanted Boogie. That's
really
that's very fair with the D line there. Anthony, what are your thoughts on, does the D line, does it fall in your priorities? And even if not, what are your thoughts there? Okay.
D line was my number 2. So now
it's my number 2 as well.
There you go. We all had it.
We're
clearly priority number 2 for the Bills is the defensive line. Yes, absolutely. And I'm of the favor of re-signing Harrison Phillips and getting rid of Starr. I just Starr, although he flashed this season, there was a couple plays where I was like, that's the first play that I am happy we have Starr on the team ever in his career on the Buffalo Bills. That's the first play I've seen where I said, I'm happy we have this guy, because he played with some attitude early on. But then, I don't know if it was the injury or what, he just fell off the earth. And we know what that's what we're used to with Starr. And I'm sick of it at this point. I don't care if we only save $1 million. Get rid of him. It's just, it's over for me. I don't want him on the team. You're a cancer on this team. Go away. We don't, I'm sick of last year. He was supposed to be the answer on this team, and now he's a cancer on this team to me. I just get rid of him, save that money, invest it somewhere else, put in a warm body for all I care. But I want Harrison Phillips for sure back, because he did show Harrison Phillips, first of all, our Walter Payton Man of the Year, I think, for the last 2 years now. And he means a lot to the Buffalo community. He means a lot to this team as a human being, as a person, and now stepping up his play at the end of the year, which, as we kind of alluded to, hurts the Bills because his market value went up a little bit. And if somebody's willing to pay him more, it's going to hurt us. I'm hoping that he will stay for right around that. I'll give him $5 million a year for 3 years or whatever, absolutely. I'll keep you for that. A cancer is a bit strong for him, but I say that term meaning it's just, he's cursed. He's absolutely cursed. I don't want him on this team anymore. Just go away. Admit that was not the greatest signing in the McDermott Bean era, and just have him go away. And they reworked his contract so they could do that. But I guess, that's changed too, because he took the COVID year off and all that.
Yeah, it pushed everything back a year.
Yes,
so
exactly. So, I mean, still, I don't care if the cap savings is $1 million. I want to get rid of him. I want to move on. I don't want to see him on this team anymore. Give me a young guy.
$4 million, actually.
Would it be that much?
$4 million
saved?
Yeah.
Oh,
if we cut Starr,
holy hell! Cut him in a minute. I'd cut him tomorrow. Because thank you for your service. Thank you for your service. Goodbye. We're giving that money to Harrison Phillips. And we need to sign depth or draft depth. I think is the big place for defensive line. Edge, as you've already alluded to, is a position where you can't feel comfortable with what you got. Can we get an Ingram in here? Hello, that was the guy I was pounding.
God,
pounding the table for. Pounding the table for him last year. Please, we need another veteran. Just sign him for pennies on the dollar and bring him in and let him be the backup, and just come in for a couple snaps. And then he, with 2 teams, showed that he's still got it. So I wish he would have been on the roster.
And he hurt us both times. With
I know. He crushed us. Yes. That's why it's okay. If you can't beat
Galaxy
him,
brain
him,
take here. I blame the Steelers for us losing to the Chiefs in that divisional round, because the Steelers decided to let him go, and the Chiefs were like, we'll take him.
Yep.
And they tried to get him in the offseason, and when he was free agent, we'll get him again. That's fair. I blame the Steelers. Blame the Steelers for everything.
So, I've been an Ingram guy for a while. I really think, just veteran presence-wise, he's very much like, if Hughes gets too much money and goes somewhere else and doesn't stay, I would love to pay Hughes $3.3 million and keep him on this team just for his veteran leadership. He knows the team. He's the longest tenured Bill. Yes, keep that guy. If he's for $3 million, absolutely. Again, we need depth at this position. You have to make some decisions. But if somebody offers him too much, you got to let him walk away, and maybe you give that $4 million to Ingram and let him come in and see what he can do with the Bills. But yeah, they defensive line, they have lots of tough decisions. I'm sick of the fans saying more defensive line. We just drafted 3 of them in the top 2 in the last 2 drafts. Yes. Defensive line this year. we need it. We absolutely need it. If they choose to invest the free agency money there to replace Star, you give a little to Phillips, you sign somebody else, you still need to draft 2 other guys, an edge rusher and another one tech somewhere. So, or sign. So you got to be
good pull.
It's the biggest position.
David, you pulled this question?
Yes, I did.
I was literally just about to click it. Awesome job by you.
Would you sign Ingram if Hughes is also brought back? 1,000%
Absolutely.
yes.
100%. Because
yes.
look at Addison. Yes. We haven't even brought up Addison, who's a free agent now.
Okay.
I think he is, right? Yeah. And what happens with him? He played pretty well, but I would love to have Ingram there as the veteran along with the rookies that we're talking about, right? So neither Ingram or Hughes is going to lead us in snaps next year, right? That if they were on the team, they would be secondary guys. We know about the rotation on the defensive line. All these guys play snaps, but they would not be the starters, right? Hopefully that would be some other combination of the guys we have, but whether they decide that Basham's ready and he's in there, or Rousseau. Fun fact, last year on the hoof, we ranked all our guys. I had Rousseau as my number 3 defensive, edge rusher that I wanted to get. And that's exactly, who we ended up with. So I was happy with it, but hopefully he can take a step forward. I expect him to be one of the starters. And then, whether they go with Epinesa, I think it has to be a veteran on the other side, but whether they bring in Epinesa, give it to Epinesa or Basham, or, sign somebody else there, it's got to be done. And then obviously one tech, we have nobody if you cut Star. So you gotta have Phillips back.
I'm in the same boat here. So I cheated and went defensive line as a whole. But we'll start with the edge position. Anthony, you and I, we were together along with Russ for night 1 and night 2 of the draft last year. And I said it then, I'm maintaining it now. So I want to preface it by saying Rousseau and Basham just had their rookie years. You cannot, I don't care how bad or how good of a year any rookie has. It's 1 year. You cannot concretely judge someone off of 1 year, especially a rookie, right? But I was not very high on Basham when he came out. I didn't like the pick. I liked it even less when I saw how much Bean and McDermott wanted him in the embedded series, when that was their guy. I was like, really? Him? I felt like I was watching Arrested Development when George Michael keeps bringing Anne around and everybody's like, her? I just didn't get it. And I also put that on Twitter, and I got so many people be like, you think you know better than Sean McDermott and Brandon Bean? I was like, okay, whatever.
As I remember, both you and I were like, oh, Creed Humphreys, please.
Creed Humphrey. There was just so many other options there. And so I'm not in any way, making a concrete decision or judgment on them. I think, to the points that we made, Boogie looked better as the year progressed. David, you were spot on. In Gregor Rousseau, his run stopping ability and ability to set the edge was such a pleasant surprise this year. And honestly, I think I didn't know what to expect from him because of, he played wide receiver and safety in high school. And then he really only had 1 year of college ball and then opted out. But he had that one amazing year and everybody saw the stats. And then you combine that with the first preseason game. What is it? The first drive against Detroit. First third down, he gets the sack. And everybody's like, oh my God, he's going to get 20 sacks. He's winning Rookie of the Year. The prince that was promised is here. Everything's amazing. And then you get to the regular season and all of a sudden it's like, well, you see how raw he is and he doesn't have a pass rush plan. He doesn't have the technique. Which will come.
For the record, is very common among rookie pass rushers.
That's
most
fair.
Rookie pass rushers and most rookie offensive linemen have no idea how to use their hands.
Yes.
That's something you learn at the NFL level.
Yes.
You have to learn that technique. You have to learn that ability.
Unless you're the Bosa brothers.
I was going to say,
because they're just aliens.
Unless you're the Bosas or unless you're Javon Curse as a rookie with the Titans in 99. Yeah. So that's a huge piece, right? That technique and that learning curve is steep for that position, especially when you're a young green prospect like Gregor Rousseau in terms of experience, at the college level or playing the position as a whole, right? So him being able to offer something in the run game, I thought was a huge bonus because I didn't expect much from him as a pass rusher this past year. I still don't even know what to expect from him in year 2 because I think Gregor Rousseau was very much the long-term piece. And Brandon Bean said it after that draft, right? You take somebody like Rousseau because the thought is, in 3 to 5 years, he could be one of the best guys at his position, right? But years 1 through 2, you'll see what you can get, right? And then we have Boogie Basham, who David, I agree with you. I think they want him more with that inside-outside versatility. So then if we're going into this next season right now, the only confirmed edge rushers that we have are Gregory Rousseau and AJ Epinesa, and I guess Boogie Basham if you throw him in there, right? If you want to put him into that conversation. Jerry Hughes and Mario Addison, for as much flack as they get and have gotten throughout this year, Jerry Hughes and Mario Addison were the two best edge rushers from a pass rush perspective on this Buffalo Bills team. They are now gone. So you have unproven guys that are right now going to be the starters going into next year. And there's significant question marks around them. David, much like you, I thought AJ Epinesa was my big breakout player. I loved how he came on at the end of 2020. Yeah. I loved how he looked in the preseason and in training camp. I went to a couple of the open practices. He was flashing left and right. He looked really good. I was like, here we go. Then he doesn't get a ton of playing time, doesn't really put up those numbers. I think there's significant question marks at the edge position. So it's equal with what I want from defensive tackle, which I'm going to get to. But that edge position, we need a proven guy who can win on the outside. And it doesn't have to be an every down starter. It doesn't. I see a lot of, comments going into the chat. For me, it would be awesome if it was like Chandler Jones or if it was Melvin Ingram. It doesn't necessarily have to be that. Give me someone who can give me someone. Woo-woo. Right? There you go. It just has to be someone who can win one-on-one matchups, even if it's like a third down specialist type, or much like last year, I feel like I'm running last year's offseason back. I will throw some money at Hassan Reddick like I wanted to last year, who he got a bad rap coming out of Arizona, and even people wanted to knock him and were like, well, he had this many sacks, but 5 of them came against the Giants. He's not going to get paid. He went on a very affordable deal to Carolina. I think he's going to cash in a little more now because he had another productive year. But give me someone like that if it's going to be an every down guy, or even just give me someone who can win, even if it's just a third down pass rush role. We need someone who can win on the outside. And I'm not talking about the scheme winning that Bean and McDermott have talked about. I'm not talking about, well, what we can do is compress the pocket and contain. No, I want someone who the offense is like, can we block that guy one-on-one? Because he kind of beats people one-on-one. We need that guy. And it doesn't have to be an every down starter. It doesn't have to be TJ Watt. It doesn't have to be Joey or Nick Bosa, but it just has to be someone who can win one-on-one, especially with how the Bills like to rotate on the defensive line. It could be somebody who just sees 30 to 40% of the snaps on the year, but they win in those pass rush scenarios. Awesome. One, thank you very much for the donation, John. John is a massive supporter of Cover One and of this guy's coverage as well. He's awesome. And he has a great comment here. He says, Buffalo needs a game wrecker on Mahomes to Kelsey for the field goal to tie the play. This is very true. Eric and I broke this down in the film room last week, and it made me want to throw up. Jerry Hughes was a half step away from sacking Mahomes. We need a guy who demands double teams and gets sacks. Spot on, John.
Finish.
And I think that's what we need. Like, could Gregory Rousseau be that this year? Maybe. Could AJ Epinesa? Maybe. Could it be Boogie? Maybe. Do I think that any of those scenarios are likely? I do not. And maybe they will be in the future. This team needs last year we played the long-term game in the offseason, right? Especially with the draft with Boogie and Rousseau for edge rush. That's what we did. This year we cannot do that again. We need a day one impact player immediately. I don't think we're going to get that in the draft. I don't think one of the top edge rushers is going to fall. Maybe you had a shot at Jermaine Johnson, but all of a sudden he's tearing it up in the Senior Bowl and people are loving it. He might go before us at 25 now. And I know obviously there's some other guys, but we need proven pass rush ability on the edge, someone who can win one-on-one consistently. We need it. And I just don't think you're going to get it from who we already have. And then if you shift to the interior, Ed Oliver had a stud year. Phenomenal. I'd like to bring Harrison Phillips back. But even with that, I don't see Harrison Phillips as an every down starter. I think he's more of that rotational piece that can flex in and out. You still need someone. Yep. You still need someone to start opposite of Ed. I have a bold take right now. If Devontae Wyatt from Georgia is available at 25, I think he is the Bills' pick, regardless of who is on the board. Regardless of who it is. He fits the style that they want. He's good. First off, he's a good player, but he fits their one-gapping penetration type of style. Now, I really like Jordan Davis as well, the other Georgia boy. I hope we just call them that. That's true. Who doesn't? And I hope also, with you saying that, mark that. I hope everybody just calls them Georgia boys. It just sounds so good. It sounds like an old school WCW tag team. It's so good. Yep.
Like the Rockers or something.
Yes, exactly. Yep. It just sounds like, I just like it. It sounds so good. Jordan Davis, for me, knowing what the Bills want to do on defense, They want one gapping, penetrating, aggressive guys all up front. Davis can do that, but he has more of that two gapping perspective to his game, which I would prefer the Bills to have. I think the Bills need in the center of this defense, right? And I'm going to tie it to someone else. Eric Turner and I have talked about this so much. Tremaine Edmonds, the most polarizing player on this Bills team, he struggles shedding blocks, right?
Yes.
But I think a thing that doesn't get talked about is how come it always seems like these offensive linemen are able to always get to Tremaine Edmonds. And that's because they don't have guys up front that are taking up blockers in the way that you need to. They have guys up front who penetrate and own one gap and get into the backfield, and thus linemen are able to climb to the second level. I am in no way comparing Tremaine Edmonds to Ray Lewis. I'm not saying they're equal in any way, shape, or form, but think of all the times, how many times were linemen just coming free and getting to Ray Lewis? How many times did you see guards and tackles getting to the second level and getting a clean shot on Ray Lewis? Now, part of that is obvious because, Ray Lewis is a great linebacker, his instincts, his movement, his reads, all that. But he had Tony Saragusa and Sam Adams in front of him. Then when they didn't have that anymore, they reloaded and got Haloti Ngata. They had guys up front that just ate. I think I would love for the Bills to have a big-bodied guy like that. I don't think they're going to because of the scheme and the mold that they have, which is why I think Wyatt fits what they want to do. If he's there, I think he's the guy. Bean said it last year. McDermott said it. They want to build from the defensive line out. I think they know that defensive tackle is a need. Wyatt's going to be the best defensive line guy there, especially from a defensive tackle perspective, but also from an edge piece. But we have to address the line. I think what's so frustrating, we're in like the same boat that we were last year where we have these questions amongst the defensive line. And I want to pivot this to a question. We're going in reverse order, go Anthony and then David. If you could only address defensive tackle or edge, which one are you addressing? Like say you can pick a stud at either edge, whether in the draft or free agency, or you can pick a stud at defensive tackle, draft or free agency. Which one are you going?
Oh, that's a tough question. Oh, that's painful.
I know. I just thought of it now, and I was like, damn, I'm glad I get to ask it and not answer it.
My instinctive reaction. So think about this roster. I'm like, oh, defensive tackle is a real big need. My instinctive reaction is edge. Give me edge. Give me edge all day.
Okay.
Somebody who can finish, just like we were talking about. Somebody who is that good, can finish. That's what we need. We need somebody who actually gets the sack. I'll take it. I'll take that all day. I take edge. We need both desperately. So it's a painful question to answer, but give me that edge all day. And just to note, I keep seeing it coming up in the chat, and every time it comes up, I cringe out loud. Trades are a thing. You could trade for a defensive tackle, defensive line. You're not trading for Josh Allen from the Jaguars. Okay. He's their best player. I don't care if you give them 4 firsts, 3 seconds, and 2. They're not trading away Josh Allen. All right. Those guys are not available on these teams. And even if they were, the Bills aren't going to give up the capital necessary to get a guy like that. It's just not happening no matter how much.
So we're not going to get Devontae Adams?
This is not Madden. Yes, this is not Madden, right?
These are the coke-fueled galaxy brain takes that I'm here for.
Oh, yeah. So. I just love it. No, yeah, that's nuts. I'm like, come on. Not going to happen. Yeah. Anyway.
To answer Anthony's question, I would go if I could get my pick, I would get a game-wrecking, 2-gapping, 1-tech. Because I don't think people always realize just how much that can open up for defense. Just having someone that occupies that much space, demands that much attention, both in the run and the pass, it just opens everything up to an incredible degree. And it's what they've tried getting with Star Latulippe, and they just haven't gotten it. So imagine what Ed Oliver can do with an actual 2-gapping nose tackle. Imagine what a second-year Greg Rousseau and Jerry Hughes can do with that type of player. It would be crazy. But they don't have that right now. And I would love to see this defense with someone like that.
I don't think they want to go with one before I go to that. Amazing comment from Michael. Michael said, "As Bean tried to turn off the cap and trades." Well done. That was very good. Nice Madden reference. I don't, again, this conversation started with, Eric and I in the film room, and I don't know if they want a two-gapping guy. Like, much like last year, right? Like, I'll compare it to edge rushers. I like what Rousseau did, but when we drafted Rousseau, the two guys who went right after him, I wanted way more than Rousseau. I wanted Odafe Owe from Penn State, or I like Joe Tryon from Washington.
Sure.
But Rousseau is a much different player than they are because of his ability to compress the pocket. The Bills don't want like bendy spin movie kind of guys, despite the fact that Boogie Basham just mashes circle and does spin all day on the outside there. They want guys that are built into a certain mold. And that's part of what, like, again, if Jordan Davis is there, he kind of breaks all the molds, right? But I don't know, like, we're sitting here saying, dude, I would love a two-gapping defensive tackle. I don't know if they do. I don't know if they want that. And in the same way that, like, I kind of want to be like, I would love it if, going back to the corner conversation, man, I would love it if they got this corner in round one. They still might just be like, no, we're going to go with our philosophy of Tre'Davious White and then, whoever we find on the street who can put cleats on and tie them himself, and we'll put him at corner two. Like, no disrespect to Levi. I think that's part of what is even more of this mold. I think now we have, and that's what makes this conversation so frustrating, right? Because I think there's clear needs for this team, but the way the Bills choose to address them, much like they did last year and years prior, they go about it in a very, very, very specific way based on their philosophy and how they want to operate. And, I'll go back to Kendall's question as well. I would prefer the game-wrecking two-gapping defensive tackle. In a perfect world, I would just get Aaron Donald because he can do everything. Give me that two-gapping defensive tackle. Give me that big monster up front. Like, I would prefer, again, if we keep going with the Georgia boys, tag team champs, I would go with Jordan Davis, but I like Wyatt as well. And I think if they're both there, I think the Bills choose Wyatt because he's more of a scheme fit. And I don't think this is what also concerns me, right? I don't know if they think they have to make a tweak to any schemes on defense. I don't know if they're seeing it that. I think they just see like, no, let's just find better guys for this scheme and we'll be good, which could work, right? But they would have to recognize a fundamental or philosophical change in their scheme in order to take some of these guys that we're laying out and thinking about. And that goes into that as well. So there's so many stressful things with these priorities. And
it's interesting because I think my answer of edge is kind of the default. If you watch the NFL, you're like, oh yeah, edge. That's you got to get pressure on the quarterback. And
I also don't think there's a wrong answer. Like, if we can say it either way, I'm taking it.
But if you look at what when we were here last year, our conversation was Stars coming back and he's going to change this defense completely because he's the one tech we need to get Ed Oliver to take that next step and do all the things that we just talked about, right? So a real dominant one tech would change this defense completely as well. It's a painful. You can't go wrong. I'll take one of both, please. Yes, please.
No, I'll take one of all. Yeah, I'm thinking of that GIF from the Road to El Dorado where it's like both. Yeah. Yes, both. I'll take that. Like, that would be fantastic. And so wait, so now if I'm correct here, I've given my 3. Anthony, you've also given your 3 because your third was corner 2. So David, that means you're the last one here to give your number 3 offseason priority for the Buffalo Bills.
Do I actually think this is my number 3 thing? Probably not.
Okay.
I'm going to bring it up anyway because I am tired of seeing Matt Hawk shank punts.
Okay. New punter.
I'm sick of it. And let me be clear.
He's a good holder, though.
He's a very good holder. I wrote a whole article about that. It's probably my most popular and most well-read article on Cover One.
Who would have thought?
I'm very proud of that. Never thought I'd write almost 1,000 words about holding and the importance of a good holder. But here we are.
You got to write what's sexy. That's a hot story, man.
That's right. But my God, I can't take this much shanking of a punt. It's a punt. I shouldn't have to be holding my breath for a punt.
Yeah.
It's not even the shanking. It's the fact that you could cook your dinner while he's like holding onto the ball, making a phone call back there. And then he realizes, I'm supposed to kick it. It's like you take more time than any punter I've ever seen.
It takes forever.
Yeah. So, you're like, kick it already. What are you doing?
So, Matt Hawk, I love you. You're a wonderful person, I'm sure. You are loved by many people, I think.
I think.
But it's time. It's time. It's just time to move on. And if you look in free agency, there's actually some options out here. You have Pat O'Donnell from the Bears. He's been a good punter for them and a good holder for them. What are you doing? What are we doing here?
I hit a button by mistake. I'm sorry. Whoops.
All right. Pat O'Donnell's out there. Brian Anger is out there. Dustin Colquitt is out there. He's 40 years old, but since when does that matter to punters?
That's true.
Corey Bohr. I'm kidding.
Yeah, Corey Bohr.
There's guys out there. I'm not going to try to pretend that there's somebody that you can draft, because I will never, for the life of me, know if there is an actually good punter available in a draft. No idea. But if they see someone and they want to draft him, by all means, do it. In my opinion, don't do it until round 6 or 7, but go ahead and do it.
Round 1.
Jesus Christ.
Punter corner combo.
We don't want to go Bill Belichick here. Remember, where did he draft? 5th round, 4th round, 5th round, something punter, and the guy didn't even make the team, right?
I remember Sebastian Janikowski. He was a kicker. He went first round. No, I thought he was first round, but I feel like I might remember that. I think he was first round.
Wow.
Yeah, for the Raiders way back in the day. Oof.
Didn't the Patriots draft a long snapper?
Did they?
Belichick.
I don't remember that.
I feel like Belichick drafted a long snapper.
It makes sense, but that would be nuts.
But when it comes to the draft, when you get to the 6th and 7th rounds, you're drafting special teams guys anyway. If a 6th or 7th round pick works out, most of the time it's because they can play special teams. So if you're already getting a guy because they're going to play special teams, get somebody like a Tyler Bass who can score points, or a punter who can actually do things that a punter is supposed to be doing.
He's a good holder, though.
Yeah,
he is a good holder.
You know what's funny? So this is
frustrating.
I'm so frustrated with saying because Hawk is just so inconsistent, and that's the biggest thing.
Yeah.
It's almost similar to the offensive line piece, right? I don't need you to be top 5. Just stop with the up and down. Just be average. That's it. Just be consistent. And if Matt Hawk can just consistently kick 42 yards, I'll take it. But don't give us the 60-yarder followed up by a 17-yard shank.
Yeah.
And the holding thing, I say it jokingly, but I was surprised when we did the film room earlier in the year. Eric and I had Jay Feely on, former Pro Bowl kicker, current CBS analyst.
That's what inspired my article.
There you go.
That was nice. Oh, that's interesting. Maybe there's some other things to this.
I couldn't believe it. He literally came on, for those who didn't watch that episode of the film room. First of all, shame on you. Second of all, he came on and literally said, a bad holder could make me miss every kick and nobody would ever know it. And that has been seared into my brain. He went further and talked about angle, the difference in a slight
if it's off by a centimeter,
yes.
It makes it
yes.
The trajectory
I had no
so
idea it was that fine of a science. He was talking about, different angles of degree and how it affects their trajectory and different rotations of the ball and all this stuff. And I was like, oh my God, I didn't realize, that it was that much of an exact science. And so now, that's what conflicts me, because I'm like, no, Hawk is inconsistent as a punter. And then I think, you know what? Bass had a really good year. Jason Sanders had a really good year for Miami last year. Matt Hawk was there, combined with what Jay Feely said. And I'm like, is there something to this? And do we have to live with the poor punting stuff? Or again, what we can just do, what John says down there, we can just stop punting. And if we just go for it.
I agree with that call, by the way.
But if you want more evidence that holding matters, look at Corey Bohorquez and how poorly Matt Crosby did. How many times did they have to kick in that Cincinnati game
And Crosby was literally yelling at him in one game.
Screaming
he wanted to kill him
on the field.
He was ready to kill him.
He was gonna choke
on
him
the field. I've never seen that before. The kicker was yelling at him
and everyone's trying to blame Mason Crosby, and it's just like he's not. He's trying to do this.
But you bring up Bojorquez, and he's my counter to this conversation. Do we need a better punter? Abso-freaking-lutely. And when you're talking about punting the ball, holding, Bojorquez is pretty much as bad as it gets. I mean, you could be blind and see that when the laces are facing the kicker, the holder didn't do his job, and that was multiple times with Bojorquez. And it's laces out. I mean, anybody who's seen Ace Ventura knows that one, but it's
laces out.
And Bass was still damn good with Bojorquez. Damn good. And now he's elite, right? He's elite because he has a better holder. He was already damn good with probably the worst holder in the league. So again, I'm with Ant. Give me somebody average. Can we get somebody just Joe Schmo average? I don't care. He doesn't have to be the greatest holder and the worst punter. He can be an average holder and an average punter, but we need to find some consistency there. The other problem is they gave Hack a 3-year contract, I think, right? So I don't even know how
he's coming back.
Cuttable the deal is. They'll bring competition, I hope, but
it's an interesting
whether or not
piece.
He stays.
It's just such a you can't have screw ups in the special team piece from a ball security standpoint. So from the returning piece, you can't have muffed punts and muffed kick returns and fumbles and things where you give possession away. And then from a punting standpoint, you can't. If you decide to punt, you cannot have a 17-yard shank that sets someone up at midfield. Those are free possessions and scoring opportunities. And, I wasn't expecting punter to be in someone's top 3.
I'm sick of it. I'm sick of every week my timeline being filled with, oh my God, Matt Hawk sucks. Because he does suck at punting, but he's so great as a holder, and there's no good way to talk about it in an actual conversation. I'm tired of it.
Yeah,
man. I think that's that's such a good microcosm of how this offseason is going to go. There's just there's certain conversations that are just so symbolic of what this fan base is and how they feel and what this team could be. And man, if free agency in this offseason and the draft and everything hasn't even really kicked in, and the Bills have a new offensive coordinator and they have a new QB coach, and then there's the potential thing that Joe Shane said in his press conference with the Giants about how the Bills were going to spend some money this offseason, and there's all this potential for this team. I think this offseason has the potential to be something really, really special, because I think at this point we all know what Brandon Beane is capable of. We all make the jokes of the trades he makes late night and how he's a cap wizard and all this type of stuff. But I think last year the Bills went to the AFC Championship, and then they went into the offseason and made long-term type moves with guys they brought in, guys they drafted, and they went with some piecemeal stuff for protection, but they went long-term. I think after how this season ended, and I'm not trying to find a silver lining or say this is going to be what drives them and gets them over the hump, yada, yada. I'm not doing that. But I think you see a different mindset from the Bills this offseason. I just picture more aggression. I don't know if that means more aggression in free agency or a trade, or more aggression in the draft and packaging picks and moving up and trying to get more impact players. I think you see an offseason from the Buffalo Bills from a front office perspective and a roster perspective that is more for the 2022 season than it is holistically for long term. Now, I don't think that means they're going to trade their entire draft for Ricky Williams like the Saints did back in the day. I'm not saying that, but I think I'm not saying, and I also don't think it has anything to do with the Rams. I know people have said that as well. Look what the Rams did. We should trade all our picks and get top end guys and go for that and just commit. And who cares if you're bad in the future? All that stuff. I think
that's the wrong approach, because the Rams lose this year. Where are they going to be? If they lose to Joe Burrow and this Cincy squad, where are they going to be next year?
But then without it's the flip side Miller, of that.
You got no draft
But
pick.
if they get that ring, then it worked out.
One ring, and then they suck again?
I would sacrifice anything for one ring, man.
Come on. Let's
give me one. Give me one.
Let's not downplay what a Super Bowl
just
is.
One. Just give me one. I would love multiple, but I will gladly just take one.
Well, look at look at the New Orleans Saints. They did the same thing, and they did not win. Right? Correct. Not after they took this approach.
Correct.
They paid way too many guys, and their coach just quit on him because he said, "This is bad. I'm out.
He's like, yeah, I'm out. And now they're
he
in.
realized
they're in
$100
dire
million
I don't want to be
Taysom
that
Hill was
team.
bad.
I don't want to be that team. Yeah, right.
He was like, yeah, I gave way too much money to Taysom Hill. I can't come back from this one. I'm out. I don't think the Bills will ever sacrifice the future and the longevity and the long-term sustainability. But I think this offseason is really one to watch, as they all are. But I think this one in particular, I think we see a bit more of 2022 moves in this offseason instead of, well, this move is for the future and this move is for the long term and development and progress and process and all that. I think you see more, no, we're going to go get some mercenaries because we're trying to get a ring right now. And I think that would be a really interesting thing because we really haven't, other than, because even I think Stephon Diggs is the biggest like offseason move, but even that was a win now and a win in the future move because of how good he already was. Like, we haven't necessarily seen a pure like, oh man, they just got this guy for like when the 49ers grabbed Deion Sanders after they lost to the Cowboys in back-to-back NFC championships. And then it was like, oh, like they're tired of losing in the conference final. They're coming for blood. I think we see something like that.
Yeah.
Don't know what position it's going to come from. But man, this offseason is going to be a very, very interesting one. We're going to start to wind down here. David, I'll start with you. Any parting thoughts, words of wisdom, maxims, theories, philosophical ideas, anything of that nature?
So I feel like we've said a couple of times on the show today that this offseason kind of feels like a lot like last offseason.
Yes.
And maybe that's because they just didn't do anything last offseason other than bring in Emmanuel Sanders and Matt Hawk.
Yes. And draft for the future.
And then their draft for the future. So you still have the same problems, except now you didn't win a Super Bowl. And it's kind of like, okay. So now you actually need to address those problems. And if they don't address those problems this year, I don't know when they're going to address for right now at any point, and they'll just keep sort of kicking it down the road and keep hoping they'll eventually get it all together in 1 year. But like, you're ready to win now. Like, I don't know who needs to tell them that they're ready to win now, but they're ready to win now. Like, they need to believe that they're ready to win now. Like, should have beaten Kansas City, and I'm not saying they would have beaten Cincinnati, but they certainly could have beaten Cincinnati, just like the Chiefs could have beaten Cincinnati, just like the Rams could beat Cincinnati. I mean,
give us the opportunity to beat Cincinnati.
Give us the opportunity. Like, that's what the playoffs are all for. It's just having that opportunity. Nobody really thought that the Bengals were going to, like, they barely beat the Raiders in the first round.
They were 10-7. They lost to the Jets. They lost to the Bears.
Mike White Jets. They lost to the Bears, and they got swept by the Browns. But they boat raced the Steelers and the Ravens. Their whole season makes no sense to me. We're getting off. We're getting way off topic. Yeah, we're getting way away from.
Well, the Bills are the better team without a doubt. I mean, without a doubt. Not that we would have beat them, like you said. You got to play the game. I think the Bills would have been heavily favored, but yeah.
But it goes
there's just when you get into the playoffs and you have that chance, you have to take advantage of that chance. And the Bills had that chance, choked it away, but they still we all look at that team and see a Super Bowl type of team. We see a Super Bowl championship team, largely because of Josh Allen and him being a demigod, but also because this offense has a lot of good players. The offensive line only needs to be like average. The special teams just don't need to give games away. The defense is good enough because of the secondary to make plays and keep things in front. Do that and then get better players for right now.
I like that. And again, it's the anti of what last offseason was, which was like future, but they didn't really, and not to knock Emmanuel Sanders, but they didn't make any 2021 moves in the 2021 offseason.
And like Emmanuel Sanders was someone that they've been obsessed with for several years. And then it was like, it almost felt like since he was finally available to them, we're like, all right, we're finally going to get this guy. And it's like, okay, but he's like 3 years older than when you first like started to fall in love with him. Like, I understand that he's still a good player, and he was still a good player, especially early on. He scored quite a bit.
He did. And then he got hurt, and things kind of
fell off. I don't know. There's got to be something else. And I think the other thing with Emmanuel Sanders that doesn't get talked about enough is that he seemed to take away from Gabe Davis playing time. Playoff record 4 touchdowns.
Playoff
Gabe Davis. So
yeah,
that's all fair.
Figure it out.
It's all fair points. It's all fair. Anthony, the other Anthony, person who shares my name and is a fantastic
Anthony
addict.
too.
No, we're equal. We're all Anthonys are equal. It'll be fact.
But between two Anthonys is the show title.
Not between two ferns. I like that
between
a lot.
Two Anthonys. Yeah.
What do you got? Any parting words or anything towards it?
Yes, I am going door to door in my neighborhood this off season with pamphlets, knocking and saying, "Have you heard about our Lord and Savior Joshua Patrick Allen?" Okay, that's what it's all about now. Knock, knock, knock. Excuse me. Have you heard about our Lord and Savior Joshua Patrick Allen? Because here's the fact, 100% fact: the Bills could do nothing, go to sleep, do nothing this entire offseason, draft 7 guys who don't matter, come into next season, and we are still Super Bowl contending team. Why? Because we have Joshua Patrick Allen at quarterback. Period, full stop, end of story. I could be playing on this roster, and Joshua Patrick Allen makes us a Super Bowl contender. And that is a great place to start at. As a Buffalo Bills fan, we have to start there. We are a good team no matter what happens. And now, obviously, we know, we all talked about defensive line today. Defensive line, they have to make a move. We physically don't have the bodies right now. So we know they're going to bring in guys that they like, or rookies, or whatever the combination ends up being. The team will build, will get better in some ways, may regress in some, meaning, okay, we don't have the money to sign a new cornerback or get the edge rusher and the one tech. Whatever it is, this team is going to get better, and that's my focus. Do what Josh Allen wants. Josh Allen is this team, the entire team, the offense, the defense, the special teams. It's Josh Allen, period. It's got to go through him.
You know what? I can't say I even disagree with you. It's cool to have it's cool to be in this position again for another offseason, knowing that we have a franchise quarterback. We're a championship caliber team. And now it's just a matter of continuing to put those puzzle pieces together and finding a way to get a championship. Cause it's hard. Like it's no matter how good you think your team is, what has a greater chance of happening? Your one team winning the Super Bowl or one of the other 31 teams winning the Super Bowl? The odds are not in your favor, and you need so many things to go right for you from both a luck and skill perspective. It's tough to win rings, man, but the Bills are on the right track and they can do some things this offseason. I think what we've laid out for this priority show for the Buffalo Bills, I think it's all, I think we're all in the same ballpark, because I think there are several key themes that have to be addressed, several big ticket items. There's some little detail pieces as well, but there are things that this Bills team needs to fix in order to, they're a good football team. They're going to be a playoff caliber, championship caliber team, but in order to get over that hump and win a ring, they have to address several areas on that team. And it's going to start in a very short few weeks. Free agency is just about a month away. The draft is 2 months and 3.5 weeks away, roughly. A little more than that, somewhere like that. Numbers and math, whatever. But this offseason is going to go fast. It felt like we were just at this spot last year, and then out of nowhere, the preseason came, and now the 2021 season's done already. So huge offseason for the Buffalo Bills. Also, huge offseason for us at Cover One. We just continue the momentum, and that momentum will be nothing without all the people who support us. So as always, thank you very much to everybody who joined us in the live chat tonight. The chat was hopping. The questions and comments were fantastic, very thought-provoking amongst everybody having the conversation that they had and all the interest that was sparked, the things that sparked our conversation, the questions that came through. Thank you very much for the super chats and the donations. While you are here, please, I know it sounds corny, I say it every week, please drop a like, whether you're watching right now or drop a like on your way out. It goes a long way towards helping this entire team to track and trend and get in front of more eyes. Please rate and review and subscribe to Disguised Coverage. Drop a like, tell all your family and friends about how awesome we are. Or if you think we're terrible, tell your enemies about us to try and ruin their day. A listen's a listen and a download is a download. Thank you to everybody for riding with us live. Thank you very much to anyone who listened later, watched later on YouTube, any of the podcasting apps and platforms, anything like that. We appreciate you guys more than you can possibly know. And also, thank you very much to my guests tonight, Mr. David Fox and Mr. Anthony Romeo. And I'm going to let you guys kind of ride this out a little bit. David, we'll start with you. Tell everybody what you do, where they can find you, and all that good stuff.
So I I'm on Twitter, unfortunately. I am at DFAUXY. You can follow me for some very lukewarm and agitated takes. And I do a recap after each game during the regular season. I do the Cover One Roundup with our other lovely friend, Kyle Salagi, on Monday nights. So we'll be back at that next Monday night. We were off this week, but we'll be back. And yeah.
There you go. Well done, Anthony Romeo. Plug you and yourself and everything that you do.
All right. Well, first off, I let it slide the first time, but Mr. is like one of my pet peeves, right? Because Mr. Romeo is like, my brother or my father or something. It's not Dr. Anthony Romeo. If you're going to give me the title, you got to give it right. Anyway, not important. Anthony is fine. But you can find me on Twitter at Anthony Romeo NY. I'm from the Hook
Dr.
Podcast.
Anthony Romeo NY?
That's right. Yeah, no.
Change the Twitter handle.
Really pretentious. Be really, really pretentious. Yeah. At Anthony Romeo NY on Twitter. Always having fun. Love to interact with people. Love it if you tag me. I will respond most likely, unless it's something really bad or stupid. But I like to interact with people on Twitter. That's what I use it for. I do put my takes up there occasionally. Working with Sterling and Eric on the Hoof. In the offseason, we had a great time last offseason prepping for the draft. It was really the first time I dove deep into the draft. And I had a blast with it. I'm still having a blast with it. Brevin Jordan comes on and gets 4 touchdowns late in the season, and I'm going nuts.
Every time he scores, I think of you. I'm like,
Brevin Jordan in the 4th round. Come on, we could have had him. But yeah, I do. I love doing the draft prep, hoping that I get to do it with you again, Ant. We could do the live coverage again. I would absolutely do that too. But there's a lot to prep for in the offseason coming for free agency, and the Hoof will be back soon. We're taking a couple weeks off, but we're gearing up for the offseason stuff for sure.
Nice. I'm Anthony Prohaska. I'm the host here at Disguise Coverage. Find me on Twitter at pro__Ant. That's pro 2 underscores ANT. You can also find me as one of the co-hosts on the Cover One Film Room with Mr. Eric Turner every single week, usually on Tuesdays live at 7 p.m. This week, we're going on Friday night to give a little Senior Bowl preview with some prospects and some film and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, I wanted to go back real quick, not to backtrack. Tom said, dude, lose the Christmas tree. Tom, I want to tell you something. I don't know don't listen to Anthony down there. I don't know if you're a regular watcher. So one, this big Christmas tree is about to come down. This little one is up all year round. I changed the decorations based on the month. If you notice, if you could see close enough, that's red garland with hearts because it's February, which is Valentine's Day. That tree is going to move over there and it'll be decorated for Valentine's Day. And then come March, it'll be decorated for St. Patrick's Day. And then come April, it'll be decorated with pastel yellows and blues for Easter. And then it'll continue through every month that there is a theme appropriate month. So get used to it. I just wanted to let you know that. I don't know if you're a first time watcher and you don't know how it works. The trees are up. I love Christmas. That little one's up all year round. This one, I've just been lazy and haven't taken it down from Christmas, but the little one is up all year round. That is my closing comment and the most important thing to take away from this show, that the little tree will never go away. And I love Christmas. Thank you to everybody who watched, listened live, later, whatever. Thank you, David, to you. Dr. Anthony Romeo, thank you as well. We got a long off season ahead of us. A lot of work ahead of us, but it's awesome. And we enjoy every minute of it. And thank you guys so much. Take care of one another. Hope you and your family and friends and loved ones all stay safe. I will see you next week. And as always, go Bills.